Welcome back to the Jalapeno. This is Ty, and here is a conversation with musician Jesse Woods, who I had the pleasure of spending a few days with in Texas toward the end of 2020, beginning of 21. We recorded this on New Year's Day at the home of our mutual friend, Ladney Hughes. Ladney, who was painting his porch on the other side of the wall while Jesse and I were trying to record this important conversation, was having a bit too much fun out there, apparently, with Matt Pennington and Jeff Barnett and Peter Nussbaum, and his voice was bursting through the walls. So I had to ask Ladney to pipe down a few times. Once he went back to his turtleish green brush strokes, this time at a quieter volume, Jesse and I were able to dig in on this episode. So get to know Jesse Woods here if you don't already. I've been a fan of Jesse's work since Ladney showed me in 2009. And was struck immediately and still by the distinct and unique feeling his music creates, a sense of genuineness and honesty and intelligence swimming throughout his engaging songs. And upon meeting Jesse, was glad to learn that the man himself lives up to that energy and more. Great guy, Jesse Woods. New music on the way from him this spring in 21. Date to be determined for now, but enjoy his already released music. Search Jesse Woods on Spotify, Bandcamp, iTunes. All the music you'll hear today on this episode is by Jesse. So here goes, ladies and gentlemen, the funny, thoughtful, talented Jesse Woods.
Yeah, I don't know. Have you ever read Empire of the Summer Moon?
No, but I've read Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee.
Yeah.
I have that Empire, but I haven't read it yet.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
I like it more than Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee because it's more like regional.
Yeah, it's Comanches, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And so I guess it's a little more it's just more about Texas.
Yeah, yeah.
And Comanches and Quanah Parker.
Yeah. Yeah, I came through the Panhandle through the Comanche National Grassland. And I'm reading right now, if you haven't read it, I'll send it to you. It's called Black Elk Speaks. Have you read that?
I haven't read it, but I have heard of it.
Yeah, it's really cool and written by a Native American.
Okay. Oh, you were telling me about it last night.
And it's like, whoa, this is cool. It's way different. The whole, I mean, I don't know enough about Native American culture to say, but the outlook on everything is not the white way at all. Right. It's very much like, I had a dream last night and I met 6 elders on horses. And here's what they told me. Mm-hmm. And it's very much like talk about connection to something bigger.
Sure.
Into the earth and to being genuinely confused by what these white people are doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And it is poetic too. It's not written like, formalized paragraphs like we know
like
in most non-fiction.
Bury My Heart. It's kind of like
academic.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it's nicely refreshing in that way.
Yeah.
It's cool.
The coolest thing about Empire of the Sun, or the coolest story part about that I thought was like, so there are no horses in North America until the Spanish brought them over.
Yeah.
Which is just crazy to think about.
Yeah.
Also, but so the Spanish brought them over, and the Comanches became the best horsemen in the world in a matter of like one generation.
Wow.
And rode bareback, would come in these kind of like guerrilla war tactics where they had this technique where they would hang on the opposite side of the horse, where they basically use the horse as like a shield.
Yeah.
And they, come through and then pop up, and then pop back up,
Yeah.
And they were just fucking the Texas Rangers up.
Yeah.
Until, because they were still using like single loader muskets.
Yeah.
Until the Colt 45 was invented, and that was like multi-shot gun, and the whatever Colt who made it, it was like a flop, and he couldn't sell any of them until this Texas Ranger had heard someone had invented a multi-shot pistol, and he went and checked it out, and they bought like 1,000 of them, and then came back, and then Indians had no chance because that whole way of fighting. You know, they couldn't just come in
Right.
and dodge one bullet, and then you were, as a Texas Ranger, you're fucked.
Yeah. Yeah.
SOS, I need an angel now. He's so fast, I feel the danger around.
Their observations.
Sure.
You know.
Sure. And being able to be a good listener,
Yeah.
you know, because human nature is just like everyone's trying to get one in, you know?
Yes.
Even if it's like insecurity or something.
Right.
It's just like a skill to be able to like to listen, you know.
Yeah. Amen.
It's not something I'm very good at, but the more you listen to podcasts, the more you're like, oh, it takes some discipline.
Yeah. Discipline, and also like nudging ideas without trying to put yourself into the discussion too much. Like
sure.
Larry King is really good at that. You know, he's like, sometimes it seems like he doesn't even say hardly anything.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you like break it down, you're like, oh yeah. And sometimes it's not even a question. It's just like, you did this.
Yeah.
Or like, that was hard for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, or something like that. And then it's like, boom, now you're off. I love that. And that's why they're doing it. I'll learn a lot about them and get more engaged in the neighborhood, so to speak. But also, to your point, if nothing else, whether I recorded it or not, I'm practicing listening and communicating.
Yes.
And connecting, really.
Yes.
That's like the thing
Yeah.
for me is like, when we've had a lot of good chats this week, all of us, but like, that's my favorite thing is when you're really on with somebody and actively discovering or exploring things.
Well, I'm running like my hair is on fire, and I don't intend to stop even when my legs grow tired. And yes, I'm stumbling on my peace of mind.
When I was a kid, we lived in Bakersfield, and we moved to Katy when I was in like 6th or 7th grade.
Where's
Katy is it's like a suburb of Houston,
Okay.
and so mainly Bakersfield is a young kid, and then junior high and high school in Houston area,
Yeah.
and went to school in Texas.
Yep.
And then traveled after that for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years.
Cool. So you moved in middle school to Texas for the first time. What was that like?
It sucked. It sucked. I mean, it wasn't Texas. It was just I was in 6th grade. I had long hair. Like, I didn't dress cool. I was shy. It just sucked because I didn't really have any friends.
Yeah.
And it's like that time when kids are real shitty to each other. And I was kind of like a church kid.
Yeah.
So like, it's also the time that like, if you like stay out of trouble, then you're even extra not cool.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was like, everyone has horror stories about junior high, but yeah, that was definitely like not the most fun part of my life. But then I started playing football, and that was like the easiest way to like connect and make friends as a shy kid, because it's not about like who's the confident kid or who's the funny kid, or it's just like you don't even have to talk. You just like are hitting your friends, and
speak with your efforts.
Yeah. And it's just like a confidence builder, and
it gives you some structure, and it matters, to you and your teammates, at least, and whoever comes to watch. I think sports are kind of underrated in their ability to help you become yourself.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it is hard. The grand scheme of things it's not like a real challenge necessarily, but it is.
You're not going to war.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, but it is an active stressor in a sense that like you're like busting your butt, you're losing, you're getting hurt, you're making a mistake, but it's like, just get back out there and do it again. And I think that ingraining that has untold potential for who that allows you to become.
Sure.
Even if
it
you're
humbles
only
you.
Yeah.
But yeah, confidence boosters at that, at that age.
Yeah.
Especially for a really insecure, shy person.
Yeah.
Is huge.
Yeah.
Because it's like, and it's not even a thing. I don't even think it's a thing of like whether or not you're good.
No.
It can help if you're good to, but yeah, I think like something like football or hockey gets like a reputation of just like producing like toxic masculinity,
Right.
And that's definitely an element, everyone knows like MMA culture and but they don't talk about like, I'm not super into MMA, but what I am into about it is those fighters, a lot of times they're like really soft spoken and like into philosophy, and psychedelics.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, you would think that they just go and like eat glass and,
Scream.
Yeah, have like, a very limited vocabulary and, just like the stereotypical meathead.
Yeah. Those guys are, and women are, you have to be so mentally constrained or in control because it's not like they're just going out and raging.
No, it looks like that from the outside.
Right. And objectively,
right.
It's violence. So it's like, well, they must be like just out of control. But in fact, if you are out of control, you will lose to the one who's in control.
Sure.
And that's, and like to literally be getting choked and to be able to be like, what should I do now? Versus just like naturally an untrained person would just squirm and
totally
tire themselves out and
and
lose. But so did you keep playing football? Was that like high school or?
Yeah. So junior high, I was still like kind of growing into myself, you know. I was always into sports and athletic as a little kid.
Yeah.
But then in junior high, I grew like 9 inches in a couple of years. So
how tall are you?
6'4".
Yeah.
And I was like a little baby horse that couldn't like even run in a straight line.
Yeah.
In junior high. And but I still, sports were my way to like make friends.
Yeah.
And, then by the time I was a sophomore, I was pretty good.
Yeah.
And then had a good junior season and started getting recruited to play college. And it was a really cool time because like it's weird because it's kind of like in Texas, if you're a good high school football player and getting recruited by college, you're kind of like this like weird little like regional celebrity.
Yeah.
But you're like 16 and it's cool, but it's one of those things where it's like it becomes your life and your whole identity.
Yep.
And went to college, didn't have like some great career or anything, started a few games and had some catches, but
where was that?
Texas A&M.
Wow.
And I had 5 surgeries in 4 years I was there.
Dang.
So tore both my ACLs, tore my pec, broke my foot.
All while you were playing? Dang.
And that stuff is a bummer because you're like, the amount of work in college is insane. And then you get hurt.
Yeah.
And then the work is even more.
Yes, right.
Because they own you. And then it's like, okay, you got to come in for physical therapy at 7 a.m. Every day for the next year.
Yeah.
And that sucked.
Yeah.
And so by the fourth or fifth one, I was like, man, I'm over this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And by that time, I was like, I'm not going to the NFL. And I also am way more interested in like what the creative kids are doing, or, friends that are like, oh, I'm going to study in Costa Rica this summer.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm like, I'm lifting weights and running.
Yeah.
So I was definitely kind of over it
Mm-hmm.
by that time.
Mm-hmm.
But the experience of playing football with superior, huge athletes,
Yeah. That's cream of the crop.
yeah,
Yeah.
was again humbling.
Mm-hmm.
But also, yeah, it's just like kind of builds in this like not invincibility complex, but like, if you're like used to knocking heads with like 300-pound, superior athletes, then it's like, okay, I can do anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, being a white kid that came from a predominantly white high school, it was a really, really cool experience to then go into college, and all my friends are black guys.
Yeah.
And, just like a culture shock, but in like the coolest way,
Yeah.
because you're showering together every day.
Yeah.
You're like lifting weights, you're knocking heads,
Yeah.
you're like your brothers,
Yeah.
Even though your backgrounds are totally different. And that was really fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, to that point, in my experience, and I didn't play close to the level that you did, but regardless, to your point about brothers, there's such an emotional undercurrent to the entire thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like not only on the field or the court or whatever, but in the background,
Sure.
in practice, meals,
Oh yeah.
and you're like, we're in this together.
Every day for 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those situations are really cool, because you get to a point to where like, you're jabbing at each other, the differences in each other, but it's all out of love, and
Yeah.
it's not like racial tension at all.
Right.
It's more like celebrating
Yeah.
the differences.
Yeah. And you get tough in a sense, not just physically, but you're able to take, like if you have a mean coach, or like a hard coach or something, and like who calls you out, who, points out your mistakes publicly, not to rip you down, but to like help, if it's a good coach, to help everyone learn from it.
Right.
But being able to take that sort of pointed, not necessarily negative feedback, but feedback that's on you, to be able to say, okay, I can move forth from this,
Sure.
versus like withering because you were, offended or something.
Sure.
And then that, again, life skill, big time.
And it's very obvious who's putting in the work.
Yep.
And funny story. So like before my freshman year at A&M, instead of training super hard to get ready to go into college, I went and like lived at a surf hostel in San Diego for like 2 months with my friend from high school.
Yeah.
And for us, it was like the first time that we're like, all right, we're 18.
Yeah.
And our parents are like, okay, you can do what you want now. And we're like, we're driving across the country.
Sweet.
Living in this hostel that was like $9 a night.
Yeah.
And it was really fun. But then, freshman training camp comes up.
Yeah.
And most of the guys in my position group have been living in College Station and training with the team. And I get there and I'm like, holy shit, I'm so far behind.
Yeah.
Yeah. These guys have been preparing for this while I'm surfing, drinking Coronas.
I've been holding on to a river, holding on to the breeze, making love It's like listening to the sun, shaking your fist at the sky. She's an ocean of a woman. You're just a casualty caught in the I'm still holding on to my river, sweeping the darkness with a broom, making love to my past life. I'm still shadow dancing with you.
Was music always involved in that endeavor, or was that come after, or was it?
You know, I always played guitar and always loved music.
Yeah.
But I also knew that my life wasn't interesting enough to write about,
Interesting.
because my life was football and
Yeah.
like lifting weights.
Right.
And I wasn't going to write songs about football. You know, it doesn't mean I didn't have like a human experience, you know, that
Yeah.
someone might find interesting.
Yeah.
But it was like, I mean, there's a reason that like Olympic swimmers, you know, generally like aren't the best poets. You know,
Yeah.
they're like, they spend all their time training on one thing.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So I didn't like write anything
Mm-hmm.
until, I was out of college
Yeah.
and, you know, got out of my bubble and
Yeah.
didn't have
Yeah.
crazy workout responsibilities
Yeah.
and stuff.
So you started traveling those after college. That
Uh-huh.
You mentioned you traveled around. Where'd you go?
I went to Winter Park, was a lifty. Yeah, that was like this transition from me going from like this like trained athlete to like a mountain hippie, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really fun. And there was like no like distractions as far as like there's no women on the mountain. There's, you know, it was literally just like snowboard,
Yeah.
come home, play guitar, smoke a doob,
Yeah.
and, you know, then do it the next day.
Yeah.
Then from there I went to California, lived in like Grass Valley, Nevada City, where my her family's from. And that part of the country is like so beautiful.
Yeah.
And, you know, I had a little day job delivering furniture for my uncle. And yeah, I always loved it up there, but it was, you know, it's just like family vacation and I wanted to like explore. I have some cousins that are my age that I'm good friends with. So then stayed up there for a bit and then came down to Venice and lived on my buddy's couch for a while. And that was a fun time because it was like, I didn't realize how different the West Side was from the rest of LA.
Yeah.
And I pretty much stayed on the West Side,
Yeah.
you know, for a couple years. And I love the West Side, but there's no like music scene.
Yeah.
Or there wasn't, you know, 12 years ago, whenever this was that I was there. And from there, I had some friends working in a studio in Austin,
Yeah.
and they'd send me stuff that they were working on, and it was just way cooler than any of the music stuff that I was around in Venice.
Yeah.
So moved to Austin. And that was the first time that I like lived in a city.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it? And then that's where you wrote your first album.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
In between there, you know, like, I think I wrote my first song, like, when I was in Northern California, And then just like when I moved to Austin, then became obsessed,
Yeah.
you know, and
Yeah.
wanted, and like got a little recording set up, and you know, it's just like learning how you know, to craft songs.
Yeah, yeah. That was what was it, 2009 that year the first one came out?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I told you that already, but I'm a big fan of
thank
all
you.
your stuff, and frequently go back and have a playlist all your albums and just let it ride.
Nice.
And it's awesome.
Thank you.
Always really good, and you are a great songwriter and singer, and you can tell that you know, your sensitivity and your intelligence and your kind of soul shines through the music. It seems like you've been, and we've talked a little bit about this, but over the last couple of days, but you like to read a lot, literature.
Sometimes.
Yeah. I guess
I go through spurts. I heard somewhere Chris Rock, who said something like, I don't get writer's block, it's reader's block. And he notices when he's not reading, that's when he doesn't feel super creative.
Interesting.
And I think there's something to that.
Sure.
But I also I'm one of those people that I like working with my hands, you know, like even in downtime, you know, whether it's like gardening or, you know, woodwork or stuff like that.
Right. Horses.
Yeah. It's sometimes it's just hard for me to like just chill and open a book.
Right.
You know? But when I am in that zone, you know, that it definitely lubes up the creative juices.
Yeah, yeah. Who initially inspired you from a music standpoint?
Oh, it has to be my dad.
Yeah.
My dad went to school originally on a jazz scholarship, and he always wanted to be like in a big band.
Yeah.
Like he played trombone and was really good.
Yeah.
But I think he realized like halfway through college that he didn't want the lifestyle of like a traveling big band musician. So switched over to engineering, you know, kind of changed his trajectory. But even as a young kid, I could always see how much he loved music. I didn't particularly like his taste, you know, but, you know, like when a Stevie Wonder song would come on the radio, like I could visibly see him feeling it, you know, whether it was like just bobbing his head or like whistling a harmony to it, you know. He's always been super into music, but a lot of jazz and soft jazz and stuff. And I always just liked words.
Yeah.
And so, and was kind of like annoyed as a kid when he'd have his like horn friends come over and play, and it's just like trumpets and trombones in the living room, you know?
Yeah.
That's when like a kid is like, I think I like Bob Dylan, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely inspired by him, like personally by him. But then, you know, like, I mean, I remember when like Billie Jean came out and seeing Michael Jackson do the moonwalk as a little kid and like, maybe it was on like a award show or something. There's like a famous clip of him like doing it like publicly on a like broadcast level for the first time. Yeah. And it was like just the coolest fucking thing, the coolest sound I'd ever heard. Michael Jackson, like that Thriller stuff was just like the coolest thing ever. And then, you know, when grunge came out, you know, It Smells Like Teen Spirit was just like, it was like, again, for different reasons, the coolest sound I'd ever heard. Because I kind of grew up mainly with like Christian music. That was the thing around the house.
Yeah.
So angsty junior high stuff,
Yeah.
you know, really hit me hard.
Yeah.
Ripping off sandy band-aids one by one. I become a backwards vampire feeding off the sun. Ain't bothering no one. All my nights are greasy and all my mornings tend to tease me since you're gone. Ripping off sandy band-aids on the beach. My grass runs circles round my reach. I've grown, overthrown, bloody flowers and broken bones. All my nights are mourning, and all my mornings have been deforming since you're gone. Hollywood misunderstood. All my nights are greasy, nothing. I know you gotta get while the getting is good. All my mornings tease me without you.
I don't know enough about music, you know, technically, to say anything that is even coherent, probably. But I appreciate whatever mood you capture, it, not only with your voice and your storytelling, but it's almost like dreamy, kind of ghostly feel, ethereal sort of. You create a world in your sound that is unique and compelling. And it creates a specific feeling for me, and I admire that. Like you know, even if it's you whistling or, you know, some of the songs where you have like a cello at the beginning or something like that, and then it's really cool. Is it? Do you know what you're going for, or do you let it? Does it sort of evolve?
I mean, both. You know. Sometimes, like, there's a new single, Sandy Band-Aids.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like my version of like a Creedence song.
Cool.
And really it was like okay, when we start playing shows again, I want to write some songs on this record that are going to be like some high energy, you know, like, you know, dueling Telecaster, you know, rock and roll.
Yeah.
As opposed to, you know, like that dreamy kind of folk sound,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And that was like intentional. I wanted, you know, a song that could run for 5 minutes and have, you know, some of my best guitar playing friends on stage, like, you know, really like ripping, like ZZ Top style.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just to like break up the set from, you know, that ethereal sound.
Sure.
And then sometimes it's, you know, just one line. We were talking about that Wendell Berry line that is in his book, I'm not as old as I will be.
Yeah.
And that was like a prompt to like, you know, I think the line is like, I'm not as old as I will be, not as young as I sound. And then it's just like going back and forth between riddles that don't really like mean anything, but just like sound interesting.
Sure.
And so I didn't really know what that song was going to sound like. It kind of sounds like I don't know, like a Leonard Cohen kind of melancholy folk song.
Yep.
And then, sometimes it's, there's a instrumental song that I wanted it to be like a, like future Morricone kind of spaghetti Western, but like, you know, kind of spacey.
Yeah.
So yeah, if the song prompt is based on words, then usually I don't know what it's going to sound like. But if it's based on a sound, then go for that sound and then fit the words in as they.
That's cool. I love the idea that you read one line in a book and then that sparks an idea. And to your point a second ago about snippets or sketches. And what's so interesting to me and why I love music so much, particularly lyricists, Leonard Cohen, you mentioned Dylan. We've talked about Terry Allen.
Yeah.
Like, I can't speak for them, obviously, but, I've heard Terry Allen say, like, I don't know if I need to could explain what this is about, or it doesn't really matter.
Right.
And that poetry, songwriting allows that. And maybe it doesn't what does it mean to make sense anyway?
Sure.
And that art form not only invites that, but rewards that type of tangential thinking. And whatever, every listener will have a different understanding of what it means, or what matters about it to them, and it changes too, which is interesting. Totally. It's like you listen to an album a million times, and each time you'll get something new from it.
Sure. Terry is, talking about someone who creates a world and a universe with their sound.
Yeah.
He is one of a kind. And I've never met him, but one of my best friends, I was telling you, made that film and has spent a lot of time around him, so I know him through him.
Yeah.
But he's a really sweet, gentleman. And as a songwriter, it's like this cartoon version of a Texan, that it's definitely in him, but that's not I don't see him as a songwriter that's really writing about Terry Allen.
Right.
It's more about this cartoon world that he's created.
Right.
And that's really cool.
Yeah.
And I think it opens up creative doors when someone like him can, really get outside of himself.
Yeah.
It's always going to come from within, but, play to the character.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And gosh, that Juarez in particular, I haven't been inspired so directly by one person in a long time, maybe ever, actually. Terry Allen, I've found him in the last few years, and I can't get enough of it. And like driving down here, I told you, from Colorado, and listening to Juarez and going through, Plainview and Lubbock and really experiencing whatever universe he's able to create. Sure. Made my personal experience with the music, but also on this visual adventure driving, so fun.
Yeah.
And fairy tale-ish almost.
Very much. Yeah, I don't know what it is about Lubbock that produces such insane talent.
Yeah.
If you've ever been there, it kind of sucks. It's it smells like cow shit.
Yeah.
It's flat. It's so crazy windy all the time. It's just it's rugged.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of like how, people that live in Canada or something, where there's 7 months out of the year where all you can do is read books and, stay inside and try not to lose your mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where, it's just you're stuck in this expansive place where a lot of times the weather you can't just go to the beach.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or,
right.
But Buddy Holly, Waylon, Terry, the Flatlanders,
Guy Clark.
Yeah.
Towns.
I don't know what it is about that West Texas that does that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm obviously not from there, but Terry Allen said something interesting about, I think it was in the Yeti video, about the spatial, to use your word, expanse, and how you're so aware of this sweeping, almost endless sensation of the landscape, and that you're always sort of looking far,
Right.
you know, physically.
Right.
But what does that create within somebody who has that in their soul? And yeah.
And especially back then, you know, 60s and 70s when those guys were coming up. I mean, I think growing up around there, it feels like you're literally in the middle of nowhere,
Yeah.
and everything's happening outside, like so far away from there that there's like a hopelessness, but in you know, in a positive way.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. And I also think it's like, you know, Lubbock is a college town. So it's this place in the middle of nowhere, West Texas, but there's constant young energy coming in.
Yeah.
I think there's something to that too.
Yeah.
Like if there wasn't a new crop of young people always coming to town,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know. Like, I think a big part of a lot of those guys was performing and playing shows.
Yeah.
And if there wasn't a college town there, I don't know that there'd be people to play to.
Yeah. Interesting. And like, have you ever heard the term genius loci? Genius loci. It's the idea is like a place has its own spirit, and it creates a distinction.
Okay.
And as you're saying this, with all the legends that have come from this particular place, and now it's kind of like a mecca almost, so that people go there and they believe that there is something there to revere or to be inspired by.
Totally. Like Big Sur has something like that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Deep South for like Delta blues.
Yep. Totally. And that's what's fascinating about art is like the coral reef of art. It like kind of grows on itself. Whatever came before inevitably is going to inspire something new.
Totally.
And the more I think that those stories are told, and that film your friend made as an example is like that is such a contribution to package the story into something that a new generation can learn it from.
Sure.
And to know why that's important and what the potential of a place and of a community sort of sprouting this beauty from itself. Yeah, no, it's fascinating. I was listening to your music this morning when I was putting mulch down, and just kind of thinking about all this stuff. But is it Danger in the Dance Hall?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that one was standing out to me about, because your songs do, and I don't need. There is a lot in your music about, you know, heaven and angels and back to the authenticity that's felt. All the songs feel very personal and filled with reverence and love, and I guess for you, where does that stuff come in? Where does what does that imagery mean to you?
That's a good question. I mean, growing up, you know, in an evangelical family, I think there's something to growing up with religion being real and tangible, that it's easier for that kind of person to live in the like fantasy world that is art to me. Like it's, you know, art is like fairy dust fantasy world stuff, you know. A piece of paper with paint on it to some people could be worth millions and millions of dollars, but it's just a piece of paper with paint on it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you know, growing up in, you know, in a family of like that really does believe in like evil and holy spirits, you know, it's not that big of a jump to kind of, I don't know, buy into that kind of like spirit world.
Yeah.
that still means, a whole lot to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to be religious to like really see the beauty and the idea of like an angel.
No. Yeah.
Like this kind of like Holy Ghost kind of symbol.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess for me it's just like my background of, and so that is not all positive. Like everyone knows like the term of like Christian guilt, or Jewish guilt, or like this idea of like dwelling on being a sinner. That can be really detrimental to people's development and psyche, and some people never break out of it. Of just this idea of like, I'm a broken person, and this is how God, designed me, and until I'm washed with the blood of Christ, I'm always going to feel this emptiness. And so it's not all positive.
Right.
Baby, can I drive your car home? I lost my keys, I gotta get out of Oklahoma. I can hear 'em barking as I sing, 'cause the hounds of heaven are after me. Walked upstairs with a friend and we got confused. I forgot where my home is, as hot as Houston. I can hear them swimming in the Buffalo Bayou, 'cause the hounds of heaven can't stop till they're inside you. Now the hounds of heaven have captured me, stole my soul and set me free. Now the town's they're headed where you stay, just a matter of time. You can't run away, it's too late. It's too late.
Ravi Shankar said all songs are about love or God. And I mean, that's pretty simplistic, but I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah, and it's funny, those are the two words at dinner we were talking about the other night, being so hard to pin down and having meaning something different for everybody.
Right.
But I like to think it comes back to like this feeling of wonder about your experience and imagination about, how you fit into this chaos.
Totally.
And there's something in religion, the second you say the word, you are sort of going uphill, because it can mean like a literal, conventional discussion about like a text, or I like to think like religion, apparently the etymology of the word is re-legio, which is like a ligament, a connection. So like reconnecting. And that, of course, is vague.
Sure.
But I like to think that there's something much more interesting about the idea of feeling connected to something larger, whether that's like a personal guy in the sky, or if it's, again, something cooler than that.
Yeah, you could say all songs are about God and love, or you could say all songs are about the universe and connection, and I think it means the same thing. But when you hear like someone like Ravi with a thick Indian accent say, all songs are about God and love, it's like, oh yeah, why do we need to make this more difficult than it is?
Yeah.
And get triggered over.
Right.
I understand, some people, once the word God comes out of someone's mouth, they think of like, oh, I hated Catholic school.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I hated this nun that was really mean to
Right.
us. And to them, that's like what they associate that word with.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot of sense too.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I didn't have like, you know, my parents are still very Christian,
Mm-hmm.
but they didn't, you know, it wasn't, and they, you know, they preached, you know, what sin is and what sin isn't, but there wasn't like a guilt of
Right.
like, you know, well, that's how you go to hell.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, there wasn't that kind of a thing.
I see. Yeah.
And, you know, they're pretty open to nuances of translations. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so I didn't have the, like, you know, someone at Sunday school, like slapping my wrist with a
Right.
ruler because, you know, I'm
Right.
talking during
Sure.
something.
You mentioned an interest in Buddhism.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know a lot about it, but I mean, you know, if you're like in a rut, in a place, I mean, elongated kind of you know, a depression or something, and you start to, I like the idea of like getting used to suffering and like kind of not like reveling in it, but like accepting it.
Yeah.
And accepting that change, you know, that's where I think some Buddhist philosophies are like very valuable.
Yeah.
And, you know, that sounds pretty bleak, like get used to suffering because
Yeah.
that's what life
Right,
is, you know. And just the whole Siddhartha story, you know, is
Sure.
it's like very different in the Jesus story, you know, because he grew up in a palace
Right.
and was kind of like sick of it.
Yeah. Like I gotta get out of here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I could, you know, I kind of felt that, like, you know, as a kid of like, you know, this is a bubble of comfort of
Yeah.
you know, all the family friends, you know, believe in the same thing, and it's all supportive and good, you know, but there's also like a huge world of different kinds of people, different beliefs,
Sure.
different
Yeah.
value systems, and yeah, wanting to break out and you know, meet those kind of people.
Sure. And meet yourself.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
in a different setting. And I think that's cool about what you were saying about wanting to stop playing football because you just sensed that your life wasn't interesting enough.
Right.
And that was like the inciting incident like to use back to Joseph Campbell, like the thing that spurs you away from the nest, so to speak. So you go see the world and become yourself
Sure.
on your own 2 feet in a new land. And then what happens then? You know, it's like you start making discoveries.
Yeah. And just meeting different kinds of people, you know. I think it's real easy for folks to, like, depending on where you're from and how you're raised, to go along, you know, and get the highest paying job you can in the town you're most comfortable in and have the most friends at, you know, and yeah, I guess I was, you know, that was a bit, I was like, man, my life's been pretty comfortable,
Yeah.
you know, and pretty bubbly.
Yeah.
And yeah, I want to like go skate around with the weirdos.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Love it. I had an experience when I left my hometown for college. I had an opportunity to go play hockey in Maine or Vermont or something like that. And it would have been great, and nothing against that as a decision. But my intuition was like yours in the sense that I thought, well, I already kind of know what that is.
Yeah.
And it'll be fun, and I'll probably learn a lot, meet great people, great opportunities.
Play a game I
afterwards.
love.
Yeah, all the stuff
Yeah.
that I'd like earned
Yeah.
the ability to do, you know?
But you're like, I'm going to go to school 3,000 miles away.
Yeah. I was like, this feels stronger.
Right.
I don't know why, but I'm so glad that I made that choice at
Sure.
that age because it was like, oh yeah, intuition was telling me something very useful, and that sparked for me the realization that I need to keep doing that stuff.
Yeah.
So then, like, after college, I went home to Boston, but then I had that bubble feeling again. It was like too good almost.
Right.
Family was there, friends, opportunities, you
Easy.
name it. All the stuff that you on paper would want your life to look like.
Sure.
But then I was like, no, I got to go. And I went to New York just because I felt like that was kind of guaranteed learning zone, you know. But point being, I think that's going to be now how I sort of man my own ship for the rest of my life.
Had you spent time in LA before you went to school out there?
No. My sister lived there at the time.
Okay.
So I think that had a lot to do with me even really being aware of it.
Right.
I mean,
right.
I obviously knew about LA,
Sure.
but like visiting her, learning about great schools in the area,
Yeah.
weather, just a whole different culture.
Totally.
It's a different country feeling than what I knew. And so that was definitely like elephant in the room intro to LA. But no, I hadn't spent much time there.
Yeah.
But I was intrigued by being in a big city and a new culture and like not knowing anyone really. I was like, I want to see if I can shed my stuff that has built an identity,
Right.
and start anew and just see what happens then.
That's cool that you could feel that as like a 17 or an 18-year-old, you know? I definitely didn't feel that till like 5 years after that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would imagine, I mean, music is another version of that kind of, maybe you're not physically going somewhere, but you are searching.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're thinking about your own experience and how to express it.
Yeah.
And I think that even if one was the worst songwriter, musician, artist, you name it, I think the fact that the trying, the struggle, or the suffering, I think that's why Buddhism, I think, applies very interestingly to creative expression, is because it's like, no, let's keep coming back.
Sure.
And observing your own experience.
Yeah, it's infinite.
Yeah.
There's no mastering to it. It's like, once you dive in, it's you're chasing something for the rest of your life.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what I liked about it.
Totally. And you said earlier about Lubbock, a hopelessness in a positive way, which I think is an interesting observation, because I think that is sort of symbolic of the inevitable tragic nature of our existence.
Right.
Is that it ends sadly.
Right.
And it's a mystery, and that could be taken as, oh, shoot, or it could be like, well, let's let it ride here.
Yeah.
Let's make the most of it in a way that is like digging into it, finding out who we are, connecting, expressing, maybe for no like grand finale or reward, but the doing is the point of it. And that, again, back to Buddhism, is like, sweep of the floor is a thing.
Yeah.
And that's
falling in love with the process.
Yeah. And then that allows you to live to depths that you wouldn't approach otherwise, because it would be easy to just kind of skate along without looking under any rocks,
Sure. Or without changing your perception or your point of view on yourself or life or love or any of that stuff.
Yeah. No, it's very cool, and I'm inspired by your work, and it's been awesome getting to know you the last couple of days.
Yeah, man, you too.
It's been fun, and more good discussions in the future, I hope.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to do my best to spread the word about your music.
Cool.
Continue to, and it's been awesome. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's fun. Anything else you want to add? Feel free.
Oh, no, man. I got nothing. New music coming pretty soon.
Yeah. Jesse Woods on Spotify. Jesse Woods all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Will you go on tour? Like, you'll be playing live eventually, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to. I'm ready.
Yeah.
Whenever life is ready.
Right. Well, Happy New Year.
You too, buddy.
Yeah. That was fun, man.
Yeah.
I love it. Glad we got it.
Yeah, that's easy.
SOS, I need an angel now.
That was it. That was Jesse Woods. Hope everybody enjoyed. Follow along with Jesse at Jesse Woods, Spotify, Bandcamp, iTunes. He's a real talent, a great guy. We're lucky to have his music to enjoy. Thanks, Jesse, for being on the show. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. This is Ty signing out from the Jalapeno. We will connect with you again soon. All the best. Much love. On we go.
'Cause I'm young.